Yes, people, we're here. We're live and direct once again, okay, with the one and only Richard Rowe. He's here ready to speak to us about this great journey, this great story of his book. So, of course, Richard, tell us about your book and who you are.
Okay, right. Well, my name's Richard Rowe. I'm white, English, retired. All my family are white. I've lived in this country all my life. In the last 6 years, I've been working for doing little bits for local charities like Coventry Refugee and Migrant Centre, and also some others. And I've made some friends. I've learned a lot. I realised how little I knew. I was working as a volunteer at the Refugee Centre when the Belgrade Theatre came in and they wanted some migrant stories. For various reasons, it didn't work out. Not everybody wants to talk about what may be very sad situations in their life. So I thought, well, it's important, so somebody's got to do it. So I decided I'll have a go. Bearing in mind, I'm 71 and I've not written anything since I was at school. So to say I was rusty is a massive understatement. The other thing is I didn't know very much, and I've had to read some books. I mean, I knew a lot of people and I was learning about people's experiences in the comedy community. And I listened to things on the television, the radio, but I had to do a lot of research to be able to talk about other people's lives. It's easy to talk about your own. So anyway, I've talked in previous programs about the general issues, which you have to explain to understand why life is as it is now, but it doesn't mean that you then repeat the errors. The idea is you understand and you do things differently because you understand. But now I'd like to go into some development of the characters. There are 3 scenes, they're not very long. One is Carl, who is the hero. He's a black African, escaped from a war zone, comes to this country. He's allocated a room in a shared house. They're all different people from different countries. They don't mix. He has no friends, no money, no activity. He's not allowed to work by the Home Office. He's very lonely, and he's applied for a right to remain, and he's desperate for a Home Office interview, which is taking forever, and it's making him depressed. So what he does, he goes to the library, and he then studies the history and the way things work, and he then works out lots of things which then give him a lot more understanding about why he is where he is. He goes for the Home Office interview, and the last bit, as he comes out, he meets 2 revolutionaries whose desire is to smash the capitalist system, and then they have a very frank conversation. So the first scene is called The Search for Truth.
Okay.
On Graham's next visit, Carl has something to talk about. I took your advice and went to the library. Good. And what did you do there? I studied the history of societies and how they form and why. Wow, heavy stuff. Must be doing you some good. Your spirits have improved, despite the Home Office wrecking ball. I do feel better. It's interesting and gives me an insight into important questions. And what are your conclusions? None as yet. They only lead to more questions, but it's giving me a context to understand some of the events in my life and how groups can both protect and destroy lives. At least I'm in a country that offers me civil liberty and allows me to study to do my research. Carl relishes his new project and cannot escape the feeling that for the first time in over 2 years, he's beginning to take control of his life. So that's the first short scene.
Yeah.
The next one is called Home Office Interview.
Okay.
It is imperative to Carl's peace of mind that he secures a date as soon as possible for the Home Office interview to assess his asylum application. Until this is resolved, planning his future is pointless. Despite Graham explaining the due process, it proceeds at its own pace, and the system is heavily overloaded, often with poorly trained staff, but this is no relief to Carl. Stress is affecting his sleep, but he still goes to the library every day, which helps exhaust him, making release into the unconsciousness easier. Escape only comes by burying himself ever deeper into his studies. It is the one thing in his life that is important that he can control. Fixating on a date for the interview consumes every idle moment of his life, becoming almost mythological as waiting for Godot, an event where everyone talks about it, but they secretly know it will never happen. Without pre-warning, a letter pops through the letterbox and is left on the shared table by the front door. It might have been there a couple of days because Carl never receives post and rarely checks. Behold, it's from the Home Office, and as Graham has suggested, the interview is in Liverpool. Remembering the warning that failure to be present at the appointed hour might be fatal to his aspirations, and having discovered the vagaries of public transport, he sets off very early. Journey complete, Carl enters the timeless zone of the Home Office officials and waits for hours. The interview is in a magnificent 18th century building, which he later learns was financed from the profits of the slave trade when the sun never set on the British Empire. Its grandness is an enduring statement of power, giving the impression of impregnability to the conspiracies of mere mortals. Migrants congregate together like driftwood washed upon a foreign shore. Carl is approached by two men. One who looks like a general is in charge. He's strikingly tall with piercing eyes. Maybe his X-ray vision, his sloping shoulders and thin frame fail to occupy the clothes, which hang in loose, ungraceful folds. The other has the impressive appearance of someone who is used to intense physical training, but his stare is unnerving, suggests obsession is his preference. He must be the foot soldier. Both are African. The general initiates the conversation. Are you here for the Home Office interview? Carl replies warily, yes. A few sentences quickly acknowledge common experiences. The foot soldier pronounces, when they see the colour of your skin, they won't believe a word you say. You're guilty until proven innocent, and they know innocence is impossible to prove, so you have lost before you start. Their demeanour makes Carl uneasy and suggests they have a mission, as yet undisclosed. Eventually, he is called for his interview. The room is huge, with elevated ceilings that catch and return every sound. But there are no sounds, apart from the footsteps and conversations of those inside. Here is a world of certainty and serenity, where the mere mention of danger is unseemly and suggests the unwelcome tracking in their own dirt. Carl's chair is screwed to the floor, as is the interviewer's desk, as if in danger of being stolen. No refreshments or small talk are offered throughout. The interviewers are two sharp-suited men, probably in their 20s. One dominates the conversation, his supercilious attitude applying that he is the representative of an inherently superior society, interviewing the national representative of an inherently inferior society, an imperfect applicant pleading to enter their perfect world. The quiet one appears shy, possibly even humble, but as the interview progresses, his comments reveal an appalling arrogance, dumbly inappropriate because he fails to display anything to be arrogant about, apart from accidentally being socially advantaged. The game revolves around catching the interviewee out with probing questions to uncover natural reactions and discredit the applicant. Questions are probing and irrelevant, honing in on details that Carl cannot remember or never knew. You say you left Agadez. What date was that? It was over 2 years ago, around July, maybe August, I think. He knew he could remember, but did not feel he had time to work it out. Which is it, July or August? Carl stumbles and hesitates. He does not want to give a wrong answer in case it is proven incorrect later. The quiet interviewer can see a winning position and jumps in. We need to know now. His commanding tone only multiplies the difficulty. After several more seconds of indecision, the interrogators interpret the failure to offer the correct answer as a victory, exchanging knowing glances and write something down. Their questions move on. What was the address where you were held at Seva? I don't know. They don't tell you. And now the not shy one thinks of a question he must now have an answer. He must know an answer to. You say you were kept in a house in Tripoli. How many rooms were there? I don't know. We were locked in a room and not allowed to roam. The house was quite big. There were many of us. The blessed amnesia that had protected Carl from his most painful memories is now turned against him, as truth feels like falsehood, conjured to manipulate an audience for dishonourable purposes. Shaken confidence prefers an apologetic delivery, acknowledging that the falsehood has been discovered. Without refreshments throughout the 3-hour interrogation, Carl's voice becomes dry and croaky. Calm words spoken in an autoclaved institution, mock attempts to recount the terror inflicted by the depraved on a distant continent. This timeless sanctuary, built out of the pain and suffering of others, is emotionally dead, incapable of recognising the fear these stories try to convey. By the end of the ordeal, Carl is exhausted, feels utterly disempowered, and now has another emotional trauma to manage on his own. Later, his support worker says the Home Office interviewers are rewarded with meal vouchers for every applicant they reject. Carl surmises that they probably dine exceedingly well on the extended diet of suffering they dish out to the vulnerable, and cannot avoid the thought that the building is an echo of the past, where white men are still deciding the fate of black men. So that's the end of that chapter. Any reaction?
Yeah, well, when I was listening, it's very upsetting, but it's still happening.
It is.
It's still happening today. And one thing I wanted to ask you was, how did you feel writing that? Did you feel awkward as a white man, or how did you feel?
No, I felt I know many of these people,
yeah,
and I feel great pain of what they're going through. And yes, some of it is unavoidable, but it's not handled well, and it needs to be dealt with far more understanding and sympathy to try and understand the realities. Later on in the book, a lot of these injustices unfold, explanations are given, and also answers about what we need to do going forward. It's a book about optimism and about making life better. Yeah. But in order to do that, you have to address what the situation is now, however unpleasant and brutal it might be, and then you understand the problems. And by talking about it, and what I hope in the book, by people, whoever you are, if it gives you understanding, then you will think differently, and then your opinions and your actions will be different going forward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the attempt. Whether it works, that's up to the reader to decide. But no, I mean, I some of these attitudes I feel deeply offended by.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
The last scene, he comes out and he meets the same two individuals.
Okay.
This scene is called The Revolutionaries.
Yeah.
The interview ends and Carl leaves the building to be greeted by the same two Africans who suggest going for a coffee. The foot soldier asks, "How did it go?" Carl is in no mood for conversation, but replies, "Badly." With obvious glee, the foot soldier rejoins, "See, I told you they would not believe a word you said." The conversation darkens, becoming quickly intense. One has military training and talks about action, sprinkled with emotive words like imperialism, Western capitalism, suppression and revenge, all linked by the inclusive hook, brother. This is not a familiar language to Carl when conversing with strangers. "Why do you call me brother?" And is quickly corrected by the foot soldier. "We're all brothers." Refusing to be smothered, Carl responds, "We're not related, I've never met you, and we're not even from the same country. We're just three men from the same continent who happen to be in England." Stepping in, the general directs the conversation. "No, we are all here for the same reasons. We must unite to right the wrongs against our people. The white people has treated us as slaves for too long. Now is the time to teach him a lesson he'll never forget." Carl is too surprised to answer, but his face looks unconvinced, which triggers the general to slip into autopilot with a mantra of dogmatic pronouncements, filling his own consciousness and drowning his audience in a vitriolic monologue, leaving no space for alternatives or invitations to discuss. Carl waits for the machine gun to reload before replying. "The wrong done against me and my people is being done by my own black countrymen. White men did not invent slavery. It was the Africans and Arabs who taught the whites how to make money from the trade. Africans have been trading slaves for hundreds of years before the white man ever appeared, and still do today in several failed states. It was the whites who abolished slavery despite the money they were making, because of their belief in the right of men to be free." Supporting the general, the foot soldier rushes in to the attack. "The white man has abused my people, stolen what is not his, and pays money to the corrupt leaders who are happy to sell my country to feed Western materialism for their own personal gain. We are suppressed and robbed of what is ours. Whites say what sounds respectable and do nothing. They must experience the pain they cause others." This is going to places Carl is not comfortable with, but he wants to bottom this out. "You left your own country because of the actions of your own countrymen. You bring your anger with you, and you want to repeat the things you have learned about war, hate and destruction to the country that offers you freedom you want back home, and you base this judgment on historical injustices, only some of which are true. Learn the lessons about what doesn't work and use your freedom to change and improve your country, not spread the battlefield. You have personal experience that it does not work, but you refuse to see it. Win the argument, because you'll never win the war." The general's failure to convert this misguided fool now fails to suppress his anger or conceal his mounting aggression. Narrowing his eyes, he hisses and falls back on the old language. "Brother, brother, brother, you're safe here, but you have an obligation to help your own people." "Yes, I'm safe here because I'm in this country which gives me rights as a human being that are denied in my own country. Don't alienate many good people by talking about black and white as if it's the same as right and wrong. All life is precious, and you have no right to endanger other people's unless your own life is in danger, and you're not under any threat in England. Don't you see how misguided you are?" The general spits his response. "Not under any threat here? Have you been to a detention centre like Yarlswood?" "No." "Then your opinion is of no value. You swallowed the white man's lies." Having witnessed revenge practiced in his own country, Carl is deeply opposed to their plans. "But you're not British, and you've come here uninvited. They have to check out who you are to be allowed to stay." The foot soldier speaks from the heart, recounting personal knowledge. "In my country, you cannot go to the British Embassy and apply for asylum. If the government find out, they will kill you. So the British leave us no choice but to come here illegally. They make the process as difficult as possible to discourage others, whatever their international obligations. And if they put you in a detention centre, you have no rights. It is worse than prison. It is worse than death. In prison, you know when you're going to come out. In a detention centre, you die slowly. Sometimes when you're ill, they don't even call a doctor. People come out in boxes. There are people in detention centres awaiting deportation. Most never get deported. All are depressed, all are damaged. Nothing prepares you for that. Detention centres are Britain's Guantanamo Bay." Carl does not know how to answer this and sits in silence, which is interpreted as stubborn ignorance of the facts, further inflaming his opponents. The general makes a final appeal to his honour. How can you not support your brothers? Have you no honour? This is an issue Carl has lived with for a long time, and he pushes back with conviction. I have honour, and I accept my obligation to help my people, but there's no honour in spreading the suffering. You come from one background, but you don't own all the events of the past. Don't be a prisoner of your past. Your spirit roams free, and all experiences are open to everyone. Just because you are black does not give you a monopoly on injustice. If you keep it as an exclusive black entitlement, you isolate yourself from many others who might support you. You perpetuate the division, and you then become part of the problem and a barrier to solutions. Revenge breeds new victims. Only justice restores order. Like a cat twitching to pounce, the foot soldier tense and waits for order to attack. As the general edges forward, Carl can see the thoughts behind his eyes. Anger, raw and bubbling, cannot be contained any longer, but this is no place to explode. Chilly as a tomb, the general's upper lip rises, revealing the veneer of a smile and releasing a mirthless laugh, devoid of humanity. His tongue on fire, the general's fingers puncture the air as he utters these stabbing words. I cannot believe you. You're one of us, but you refuse to honour your responsibilities. It's people like you who let the white supremacists get away with it. They have to know what suffering they're causing by feeling it themselves. You are not a brother. The general stares in disbelief at this spineless, white-loving coward, devoid of honour. All three are coil springs, locked and loaded, rigid, silent, ready. Suddenly, the general exhales, deflates, and in seething exasperation, tosses his hands in the air. The tension is broken. His dying words have concluded the confrontation, and Carl is dismissed from thought and deed. In despair, the gang of two gather their scattered emotions and saunter off in pursuit of other converts. Two righteous crusaders, addicted to war porn, preparing to detonate. Imposing their beliefs on others, they paint squares and then instruct others as to which square they must stand in, while simultaneously denying others freedom of choice. Shaken but not stirred, Carl is convinced that if this misguided pair succeed, it will result in chaos, and the power vacuum will allow other extremists to move in with their own agendas, denying the rights of the majority. Instability will breed instability, and this can last for generations. Later, he reflects on this. He reads about the Russian Revolution of October 1917, when the overthrow of the Tsar was hijacked by Lenin, and the power, once seized, was used to crush all opposition and kill the democratic process, which still dominates the lives of Russians today. Just because one form of injustice is removed does not mean that it's replaced by something better, as half of Africa can bear witness. Carl realises that his country, like many on the continent, have a long way to go. But whilst he acknowledges many of the injustices, he believes that spreading understanding by focusing on what is true and building together is the best way to gain support for the changes that will be necessary. He feels that his research is the best way that he can help to improve the lives of his countrymen. Indiscriminate smashing of all opposition will polarise groups into head-on conflict, and from his experience, it is always the most vulnerable who suffer. As the West is the more powerful, it is the Africans who would come off worse. Much later in his studies, he would come to understand that the West mistakenly equate radicalism with irrationality, and fail to understand that these revolutionaries have merely chosen a different path to manage their power base. By believing that an alternative opinion is irrational, the West delude themselves that once their opponents rationalise the situation, they will come to the same conclusion, failing to understand that this apparent logic will never become reality. Rebuffed by the Home Office and rejected by fellow migrants, Carl abandons the Liverpool cafe to start the long journey returning to his singing wardrobe and complaining bed. right now, solutions feel like daydreams without wings. That's it. How did that sound?
Yeah, wow. First of all, wow, because in some respects they're all correct, they're all right from whatever journey they've come from or what they've seen.
Yeah, I mean, the best comms are 90% true.
Yeah.
And one of the problems is not that there aren't injustices, not that people don't experience them, and they're not injustices now. The problem is if you take the past and relive it, you won't change anything.
Yeah.
And that's true of all of us. And that's why the book, Prisoners of Beliefs, is trying to say we need to understand the past, we need to be able to talk about it and address it, but from where we see the problems, we then need to understand what are the new actions, and one of the few ways we can do this, we have to work together, whoever you are.
Yeah.
One of the things that the world must learn is our interdependence means that whereas before, being in one tribe, you were either successful, very successful, or not successful. We're actually moving to being in one world tribe, where our interdependence is absolutely vital for our survival.
Yeah.
We couldn't become self-sufficient because London, we can't grow enough food in this country. We need materials for our factories.
Yeah.
The financial city of London is international. We would not survive. So independence is an illusion. And unless we understand that, we will not even think in the right. And in the process, there's massive injustice and inequality in the world, which we benefit from. And that's true of everybody. Even if you're an asylum seeker, if you can go to Primark and buy 6 pairs of pants for £4.50, 75p each, they probably, between the dyes, the materials, the packaging, the transport, the design, they've probably been in several continents.
Yeah. And
you can buy for 75p. In that whole economic life and organisational structure, there are massive injustices, and that the book goes into those, which is why when Carl later on meets a self-made white English multimillionaire and he thinks if I can do it, everybody can, Carl educates him that it's not an equal system and it's not open to everybody.
Yeah.
And that he is at the top of an economic pyramid which he can manipulate the system, he and other people in power, which is mainly the West, so that they take a disproportionate amount of the benefit, and the outcome of that is that some people have almost nothing, even if we're totally dependent on them. Now, this is not only impractical and unsustainable, it's immoral.
Yeah.
And that's what I've tried to incorporate into the story, and that's why for me, Prisoners of Beliefs applies to all of us, not just the disadvantaged, not even the advantaged. The advantaged are as much prisoners of beliefs as anybody else.
100%.
They don't understand it. They think, oh well, everything's okay. There's no reason for change. If we don't change, we will destroy the planet, and humanity will suffer, and we will destroy half the creatures on it.
Yeah.
So it has relevance to everybody. You know how well the story's written, and then how much people will go along with it. That's up to them. You know, I don't have the answers. I'm asking the questions.
Yeah, definitely. And tell the people, how can they get into this book? How can they buy this book?
Okay. Can I give you my email address? Anybody, it's going to be published shortly. Anybody who is interested, just send me an email. There's nothing to pay or anything. The book is £8.99. Anybody who pre-orders it just says I would like a copy. If they give me their contact details, the initial launch will be at £3.99.
Okay.
So what I'm after is to get people to read it and think about it. It's not about, I won't make any money, it'll cost me more to publish the book that I'll get back in revenue, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
I don't want to sell 6 copies. I'd like to sell 6,000 or however many, because then what I'm trying to say will reach more people, and that's the important thing.
Definitely. So please tell us your email so people can get in touch.
Yeah, my email is richardrowe@hotmail.co.uk, and that's spelled the ordinary way, Richard, RICHARD. There's no dot, and then it's ROE, Richard Rowe, @hotmail.co.uk. And if anybody just sends me their contact details, it could be a phone number, an email. Well, I'll have their email address, because if they send that, I will then keep a list of that. As soon as the book's out, I will then contact them and say, yes, you can buy it, and where you can buy it. I may have to order some for myself so that I can charge the price of £3.99 for everybody who pre-orders.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's, as you can see, these are heavy subjects, and I've tried to work out, if you like, the stories and the justifications. So how people respond is, as I say, it's up to them. It means a lot to me, because I think it's very important, and it affects many lives in Coventry and also throughout the world. I think that's why it's taken me so long, because I didn't know much, and I had to do a lot of work to find out. But a lot of people, a lot of migrants, lots of organisations. You know, I've met lots of people, and they've educated me, and I'm very grateful. And I made some very good friends as well. So, so I think differently because of doing the research and then having to put it into words in a book. And I feel better for it. I feel more confident, more in control of my life. Yeah. And there are many people, whether they're English or not, who don't feel in control of their lives. They think there's a big system and they're powerless. And the reality is their personal actions are important for their own preservation, but also it mustn't be at the cost of other people. And that's something where we as a society need to learn.
Yeah. Well, you know, I just wanted to say thank you to you for actually being willing to learn these topics and understand where people come from and what their journeys are.
No, I've really enjoyed it. This isn't hard work. This is what I like to do. Yeah. It's the most important. To me, this is the most important job I've ever had in my life. Yeah. You know, I've been an accountant. I worked in industry and had some reasonably senior positions, etc. None of those are as important as what I'm trying to do here.
100%.
And if you know, if it benefits other people and they feel better for having read it and then thought about it, then to my mind, I've achieved, you know, what I possibly could.
Yeah, that's definitely a great thing.
But you know, it is upsetting. It's upsetting to write. I mean, there's a love story in there: a Hindu girl and a white English boy. This Polish guy who comes over and he can only work in a car wash illegally, and eventually he gets a job, and he happens to get a job in the factory where the white English multimillionaire is. There's a little old lady who lives around the corner, and she's a volunteer in the hospital, and some of these people go to hospital, and she starts to talk to them, and she learns a lot, and she talks to Carl, and then Carl starts to talk to other people, and they start to see things they learn from Carl. Yeah. So the things I've learned, I've then used Carl as the voice, and if people go along with that, that's great. If they disagree, then that's absolutely their right, and it's not for me to say that they're wrong. But when they try and justify it, what they will find is that they are then using their own beliefs to justify it. When you start to look at them, you say, well, really, is that, you know, do you fully understand, or are you just accepting what you've been told? Because if you purely accept what you've been told through the generations, you can see in the world at the moment the differences in beliefs, the troubles it causes in Yemen, the struggles that the migrants have coming into this country, the economic slavery that is practiced widely in Africa, in Asia, in South America, etc. These are completely immoral. And then when you come to places like Ukraine and Russia, their beliefs, Putin has a set of beliefs, and that is what is guiding him in his decision making. But in the process, he's having to lie about a lot of things and cover up and reinterpret, and that is the problem. If you then, all societies have their myths, some of which are true, a lot of the substance is true, and then there are bits which are just not correct. They're historically not correct. And that is true of Christianity, that's true of democracy, that's true of capitalism subjects, and point out what the major problems are in today's society with many of these things. Yeah. I mean, democracy, in many ways, stops at Dover.
Yeah.
And that's not right. Capitalism tries above nature, control nature. Well, there's two things that you will never control. One is nature and the other is time. And unless we should be far more modest in our self-opinions than we are. And it does cause major problems. We destroy creatures throughout the world. We don't even know what they do. Yeah. We use things. What we don't understand is they interact. Yeah. So biodiversity, we're destroying, and we have no idea what the ramifications are. And if creatures become extinct, there's no going back. And we don't know whether life for humans will be sustainable afterwards. We have no idea. We're running blind.
Yeah.
So those are the challenges, and they affect everybody. And I hope the stories are of interest to people.
Most definitely, I'm sure it will be. And I wanted to say thank you to you again for sharing that story, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, I've got there's loads of other stuff. Everything is factually based. I mean, I've known people who've gone for interviews with the Home Office, and opinions vary. Some of them say no, they're reasonable. Other people say that their attitude is appalling. They're very inexperienced. They have no empathy. They don't understand the people they're talking to. So I'm sure all of those are true in different situations. But I'm trying to get through to what's fundamentally true, because if it is, it's true for everybody, and it doesn't matter who you are. And if you can get through to that, you then have a basis to talk about the facts, the reality, what the problems are, and then you can start to think about what the solution should be. And that's all in the story. One of the things is that the continent in the world with the most potential is Africa.
Yeah.
And the reason is it's the poorest in terms of the people. It has the most resources of anywhere in the world, and therefore it has the most potential for improvement.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the African population will, within the next few years, will be greater than the Indian population and greater than the Chinese population.
Yeah.
And if people, say white people in this country, object to migrants coming over, well, they need to do something about improving the trading relationships that they have with these very poor countries.
Yeah.
You get little kids and they're, a few years old, and they're hunting in streams for semi-precious stones that are of absolutely no use to them, so they can go down to maybe a Chinese market or wherever and sell them for next to nothing. And all the added value then goes to the countries who control the economic system, which is mainly the West. But the other countries, like China, are catching up rapidly in this process. Yeah. And we need to change capitalism. Not that it's wrong and needs to be destroyed. It's been very successful. But it's been too successful in the same way as humanity's been too successful. There are too many of us, and we're consuming too much.
Yeah.
And one of the things the people who control the system have to understand is that they're consuming too much and they need to change their lifestyle, because it's not even good for them. Being in nature, in the countryside, and having freedom is far better than being in a tiny house with all the electronic gadgets you could possibly afford, half of which are on credit. I mean, that is not a lifestyle, and people get fat, they get depressed, they get unhealthy. That having more, consuming more, is what drives capitalism, and it's achieved a lot, but if it doesn't change, we will be destroying ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of wittering away. But anyway, that's where the book's coming from. If anybody would like to buy it at $3.99 when it comes out, just send me an email, and I'd be very happy to contact them as soon as it's available.
That's great, no problem at all. I just wanted to say again, thank you, because it's been interesting. I've enjoyed listening to what you've had to say, and like I said, I look forward to the next one.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed.
Anytime. Have a good rest of the evening, yeah?
And you. See you, Katrina.
See you later. Bye-bye. Bye.